Hello, it's Lee. I wanted to give a quick talk at this moment about, as the title will suggest, about shadow people. And this is also called, or affiliated with the title at least, Old Hag or Sleep Paralysis. Now, there are, I guess, a few different types of varying forms of encounters people have with sleep paralysis. And upon, I guess it might be fair to say, upon a greater encounter or a more vivid encounter perhaps, that you could say the shadowy attacks from shadow people become more valid and more the purpose behind just mere sleep paralysis. Now, this video is intended for persons that mainly have encountered it themselves, and also for people that are very curious. If you're coming to look at this video because you wish to mock, or you wish to make fun or whatnot, well, you can certainly do that, but I will challenge you and say that your wishing to make fun or make light of it has to do with your lack of knowledge in the subject and your fear of it, simply put. So, I myself have encountered these sort of attacks beginning in my early-ish 20s, I'd say around 22, 23 years old, something in and around there. At the time of this video, I'm 31 years old right now. And the attacks were from about that age, 22, 23, to maybe 26 or so years old. So within the span of a few years. And if someone would have told me about these things prior to my own experience and my own encounters, I would have said it's quite possible, as opposed to no way. People that say no way about something usually are, well, they just don't want to accept it, so maybe they're lazy to do research upon it. So it's not something that they feel the need to look at, so they want to dismiss it. That's fine. Mostly, though, I will say that these things happen to people that are on a spiritual path, people that are already somewhat awake, people that have somewhat of a concept of God, somewhat of a spiritual calling and pulling, people that are mystical, people that feel they're a little more awake than others, maybe in as far as perceiving different dimensions and entities and ghosts and spirits and whatnot. So I believe that it's common for people that are going and trying to discover truth and light, and this challenge comes along the way. I don't believe that these shadow people and old hag, etc., these paralysis attacks, happen to those that are not looking at all for any kind of spirituality, because if this world is a tug of war between the good and the evil, if people are not looking for any enlightenment at all, to use that word, then the dark side just goes off. We don't even need to bother with those guys. They're not even trying. So they'll just laugh at them while they go back to their whatever their emotional needs and etc. But I'm talking about actual encounters and experiences. So my thoughts is that, yeah, it happens to people that are on a path, and it comes as a challenge. It comes as a reward and a blessing, more so than any kind of punishment or bad experience. And the reason why is that it is rewarding your path. It is being shown, and you are experiencing it because you are meant to experience it. You are meant to fight it. You are meant to defeat it. Now, I'll go on about my, I'll share with you my stories. Some bits and pieces are on some other videos of mine, but in and around that time of 22, 23 years old, the movies, the Matrix movies, with Keanu Reeves and all that, the very popular Matrix movies, were coming out and were out. I think maybe the last one was yet to come or something like that. And I was listening to all sorts of alternative music and different things. A lot of cool underground sort of mystical bands, like the music band Caius, which is a great classic for me, and Clutch, and a little more popular, some more popular ones like Tool and whatnot. And I also was listening to Rammstein, the German group that is, well, they're certainly interesting artists, to put it that way. And I was very much reading the Bible and philosophizing about things, and I didn't care much about the church and the control mechanisms. I was wanting to experience God for myself because something happened to me, and an experience happened to me that kind of woke me up and said, oh wow, there are higher powers and things. So it was a tangible proof, to put it that way. So I was very much delving into the spirit and looking and saying, what's going on? And how come, for example, how come Jesus might say one thing and the church does a complete opposite? You know, who's lying? What's going on? And what are the conspiracies and blah, blah, blah. And up the ladder it goes. And so in and around this phase, and I was starting to have mystical experiences. I was starting to have dreams and visions, and odd things would happen to me. Things that are unexplainable that were started to happen. Well, unexplainable as far as modern physics or technology might wish to explain it away. I'm talking more, super conscious or supra-conscious experiences that came down to a very simple, tangible level, to put it that way. I can't word it well, but if you know what I'm talking about, then you do. So, in and around this phase, that I had my first sleep paralysis shadow attack. And it's not mere physics, or it's not a paralysis that it just, something happened and you can't feel your body or you can't move. The distinction is it's a fear attack. It's a paralysis of fear. It's a weight. It's a recognition and a perceiving of an entity or entities putting it upon you. And that is the stark difference. I don't know, it was midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, I can't remember. Often around 3 o'clock in the AM is when a lot of the dark spirits like to bother people as they're in the middle of their rest. Strongest with the absence of light. So, and you're at your most vulnerable too, you're just kind of lying down, even if you're active in other ways. But I had this horrible dream because if you remember at the end of the first Matrix movie, the music band Rammstein is featured at the end of it. And on their album Mutter, which means mother, I guess, it was showing the band members and a baby in the greenish watery jelly, and as if being hooked into the Matrix, so to speak. So they had used that movie idea and kind of linked together the concept of being asleep and then not even knowing it, kind of thing. So the entities that were there, I felt this insurmountable amount of fear on me all of a sudden, and I was and I was trying to wake up. And that's where it's called paralysis, because you want to wake up and you want to shake it off and you can't, at least not at the beginning. And so I was in this struggling state, and then images were given to me of the Matrix, and I saw my own forehead cut open and my skull and all sorts of weird things, and they scared the crap out of me, basically. So I finally, with great struggle, fought off the entity, and it went away. And then I went into the shower at 1 in the morning or whatever it was, and I put the water on, and instead of standing, I just lied down on the shower and let the water cleanse me. And I was just thinking, holy freak. And I said, now I have personally experienced for myself that a demon or a shadow person or this kind of stuff is very real, and it happened to me. And it was only a few years later that I realized, and I thought always that, okay, throughout history people must have experienced it, but I didn't know how common it was until I started looking online, like on about.com, on the paranormal archives on about.com that the guy Stephen Wagner runs now. Excellent website there, and a lot of stories about it. So when I started to read them, I said, bingo, that's exactly it. Now, this attack, though, that happened to me wasn't over with that. It started to happen a few times. It would go away, then it would come back in a week. It would go away, it would come back in 2 weeks. It would wait a month. It was always a surprise attack when I would least expect it. And it is exactly like that. You are filled with a great amount of fear. You feel this wavery energy about you, and it's trying to terrify you and disempower you. And you're fighting so hard to wake up. You're struggling to get your power back. You're fighting to be able to move and challenge it. And I eventually started to beat it. I started to just say, well, the light in me is stronger than the darkness that is you. And so, taking on my courage and using the light force that is in me, I was able to start just throw them away. And it was a good victory. I felt very confident about it. And then they waited a long time before they came back. It came back another time. I was sleeping over at my mother's house, maybe about 23, 24 years old, sleeping in the basement. And I had a bad dream of this skull and bones and this long spine and this poisony thing floating through my mind. And I had this fear again. But this time it was easier to defeat. And I shook it off and said, "Oh God, not again." And because I thought that I had beat it for good, but it wasn't done yet. And this is a very real thing. It's a 100% true story. And if it happened to you, or if you're curious, or if you are curious about these things, I don't recommend you ask for them to happen to you, but please if you have a heart of truth and humility and love, and you're looking for truth on YouTube and whatnot, then please trust that these encounters are very real. Angels and demons are very real, if you want to give them that name. I don't really know what name they should best be called, but there are good assisting forces, and there are the opposite forces that are about trying to confuse and damage you in some way. So I had, after the poison skull vision or encounter I had, a little while later, when I was back in my apartment, my normal bed, I had an encounter where I saw myself. This time I actually saw myself in a dream, and I was aware that the attack was happening in actuality, but I was also still under the influence of what we call sleep. But I was able to have images about me, and I saw a literal dark silhouette of the old cartoon type of ghost, like without legs, just like a head, arms, and then like a wisping bottom part that turns into like a little point, right? And it was above me, and I saw myself a little older than I was at the time, and a little older than now, perhaps, maybe in my late 30s. And I had dark hair, a beard, I was wearing blue robes, and all about me in the room were antiques, like antique clocks, and maybe perhaps a suit of armor and different stuff like that, like just showing different objects throughout history. And I remember saying to the entity that was floating above me in this bizarre room, I said, "I will raise my hand only and you shall go." And I went like this, and the entity went phew. And then I woke up knowing that it was an actual experience, but it took place in the dream world. Now, people that understand lucid dreaming and the different fabrics and fibers of the paths of consciousness understand that there's a difference between this kind of thing and then just a regular dream. So this encounter happened, and I felt again confident, and I had gained another victory. Now, it was, I believe, after this time, some time had passed, and I fell asleep in my living room in the afternoon. I was very exhausted from work and whatever else, and exercise and etc. So I had fallen asleep, and it was, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4 p.m., who knows? I don't remember, it's some years ago. But it was the afternoon of the daytime. And I remember feeling a fear attack against me, and this time I woke up, as you and I are awake right now, and I saw a literal, actual black shadow on the wall. A 5 foot something, 6 foot black humanoid shape. A shadow on the wall. And it saw that I saw him, and I said, "Ah," and he literally flew out the window. The shadow went towards the window and then was gone. So I said, "Oh, so this can actually be seen in not even just something felt at night or seen in a dream, but this can actually be seen in the live blinking daylight of the day." And if that happened to you, you know exactly that I'm telling the exact same story. I'm telling the exact truth, that this is real. You can see these things in actual daylight. I guess it has to do with a certain tuning or a state of mind, or a certain way your mind's eye is able to perceive. Because, for example, between you and I, this video screen, or between me and the wall, there is energy, and there are things that we don't see with physical eyes and physical senses of perception. So maybe it has to do with fine tuning. So for whatever case, I saw this shadow entity on the wall, and it went out the window. And it's very true. This is a 1,000% true story. And a little after this, I could get on with a long sort of side story that's related, and I don't want to do it on this video, but I had encountered a human being, like flesh and blood person, that was very dark and very tricksy, and he was older than I, and he tried to tell me many things and tried to confuse me. I thought that it might have been one of the dark entities in a human body. That's another story. But in and around this time, there was an encounter with in my mind of dealing with this person in the astral world, and we had a conflict, and I had picked him up. I was in my apartment, and I threw him outside my apartment. He went through the floor and all that and landed on the pavement in the backyard parking. So we had some kind of fight, and I was victorious. And this happened on 2 different nights, and I think it happened 3 times, 3 body slams, something like that. And then I had a dream. I felt this incredible amount of fear come back to me, but I wasn't as afraid this time. And I remember hearing my own voice in my mind saying Maharaja, which means, I guess it means great royalty in the old Sanskrit tongue. So I thought it had to do with a past life of mine and a past life of this other guy, and we had been ancient enemies from far beyond. So I said the name, and I felt him shiver with fear and trying to put fear on me when I said the Maharaja or whatever, but I was just simply able to push it away. And again, I felt empowered. The last time that I had an encounter like this, that was, at least I was aware of it, if maybe it happened to me in different subtle ways. But the last encounter I had with shadow people, or the old hag, or the sleep paralysis combination, was a little while after that encounter. I was asleep again in my room in my old apartment, and instead of making me afraid or feeling this fear, they tried to attack me in a different way. I remember hearing whispers and things in the back of my mind, and they tried to say, join us, come back to us, something like this. Then I felt, not my physical mouth, but as if a different body of mine, a different astral or spiritual body of mine, do this big wicked tooth-filled grin, saying yes. And then I said, oh, no, you don't. And I shook them away, and I said, interesting. So they tried to make me think like them. They tried to do it a different way. And they should know by now that I'm not going to the dark side. I'm not gonna follow in that kind of footsteps. Now this is 100%, 1,000% true story. And I'm wondering, does this thing, this trick, this mind play, this suggestion or whatever that they tried to do to me, does that suggest that some time ago we were like them? I'm willing to believe this is very possible. And now we are illuminated, as opposed to, like, we are beings that are looking for light as opposed to darkness. Although on this very earth right now, neighbors and people all around you, they can be of the any combination of good and bad and in between and all that. So we are physically manifested in this world to adjust our consciousness. Let's put it that way, simplest, I guess. And anyways, just to wrap up, if you experienced this sort of thing, then you know exactly that I'm saying the truth. You know exactly that this is real. And if you're curious about these things, you haven't experienced it, but you're curious and you think it might be true, I'm telling you that it is true, and these things are real. If you want to doubt or make fun of it or poke, make light of it or laugh, that's your choice. And I hope, even if you're like that and you want to make fun of me, it's okay. But I hope it doesn't happen to you until you're ready to fight it back, because it is very real and very, to say the least, very intimidating. And I would imagine the younger it happens to you, the harsher it is. I had thought that either it was one of my own thoughts or I had read it from somebody else, and I'm not sure now, but I had thought that it happened to you in and around 20 years old, a little bit, give or take, a few years earlier, a few years after, that you would be challenged by the demons at that point, and your victory over it, and I have become victorious over it, thank God, that this is a type of preparation. It's for you to see for yourself who you are, for you to prove for yourself who you are, your allegiances and where you're going, I suppose, and your ability to, if you see it happen to someone else, you can comfort them. If you encounter dark negative forces in someone's home, or like haunted houses that are not even just necessarily a spirit of someone that had died there, but it could actually be like a demonic type of entity, to use that word, then you can actually have power and courage to face that, perhaps. So those are my thoughts. I would like to maybe write a long chunky chapter on it one day, and give my further thoughts. But this, for a quick video, people can get bored quickly, and I'm going to get bored of myself soon if I want to go too long on it. But anyway, these things are very real. It's actually nothing to be afraid of. You actually can be victorious. Your light, your power, your righteousness, your justice is stronger than them. And whether it's some of them or groups of them, or you see them in this and that, take on the mantle of the holy light and be not afraid. If you are not the aggressor and you are in the right, as it were, in that way, you're just, trying to be a peaceful being, then you're justified to win. You're automatically meant to win, as long as you don't give in to fear, because they are about fear. That's the main thing. The devil's biggest tool against us is about fear. Being, aware and enlightened enough, to put it that way, to have trust in yourself. That's a great thing to do for yourself. So that's my simple talk on it. That's my testimony. I encourage others to share theirs. I haven't really searched too much on YouTube for other people's encounters yet, but I wanted to give my own. Feel free to leave comments about it. If you want to respond with a video, I'd be very, very curious to see your own encounters. If you want to give me a private message talking about your encounters, I'd love to hear about it. And let's be comforted that these things are common enough, and we don't have to really think that we're oddball because we experienced it. We can actually, realize that it's kind of like an almost necessary trial or task to go through, to give you a self-actualization of something. Maybe that's the best way I wish to put it right now. So, I wish you the best. Have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good weekend or week, whatever the case. And I'll have more videos to come soon. Cheers.